start with the Robinsons program. Bron and Hannah Robinson, been over 50 years in the business of RV Robinson Contracting. Their motto, probably thought up by their sons, I don't know, get dirt done, or get anything done.
That was kind of later. Can I take this off?
Yeah, now you can take that off, and
That was
Go
kind
right
of
ahead.
later when my motto has always been the greatest in earth, spelled G-R-A-V-I-S-T, in earth. So, anyway, thank you very much for having us, me, here to talk about our business. As I look around the room, I see almost all former customers. So I think maybe I'll just let you guys tell the story and I'll go home. But thank you all for coming. It really has been a super ride for us. I can honestly say, with the exception of the stuff that one always does in the bathroom when they're done, my job has never been work. The part that you use in the bathroom when you're done, it has been work. And thank you, my lovely bride, who has done 99.999% of it. So, just a little clarification, all of you know me as Bron Robinson, all right? Why is it RB Robinson Contracting? Well, my mother did that to me. She had 3 brothers, L. Bron, Bronson, and Robert. So she named me Robert. My given middle name is B-R-O-N, Bron Robinson. That she took the Bron from L. Bron and from Bronson. And they were always going to change it to Bron Robert. But once I got an Uncle Sam's employee, it was a little late to do it. So anyway, I sort of tried to make a little outline here of I'll probably revert back to parts that I didn't remember. But in any event, the whole thing I started with a childhood desire to operate a bulldozer. Every kid wants to do something. Well, I wanted to operate a bulldozer. We lived in the old brick building that was formerly known as the Millstream Inn, only we lived in the part that's still standing. So I would play in the lime pile that was behind Gordon Minskoy's shed with my toy bulldozers, which was right next to the raceway gates, which they would open up daily when I was there playing as a very youngster. CP Ward would go out every morning and raise those gates, let the water go in so the mill would run till they ran out of water about noon, and then they'd start the auxiliary engine and continue from there. And that was great fun because I could go out and watch him, and the water just rushed right down through there. Well, in the later 50s, middle 50s, I was still very interested in bulldozing, and Fred Jantz had the bulldozing consortium in town, and he lived in Hubbardtown. So I would walk the railroad tracks down to Hubbardtown, which ended up being just across the street from where his place was, just to see if he was there or doing something or would allow me to join him in moving a machine or ride with him or whatever he was doing, mostly pester him. And we did that I did that quite often. And he was very, very receptive to telling me what was going on and how it was going. So I was really hooked. In the early 60s or late 50s, as I proceeded to bother him a lot, he would let me operate when he had more than one machine on a job. So I started just helping him out. And I, of course, didn't want any money. I just wanted to play on the bulldozer. So my dad was in the grocery business in Candor for 39 years, as most of you know. I soon found out stocking shelves, grinding hamburg, etc. was not for me. Dad really didn't object to me not working for him as long as I worked. So I went to work for my Uncle Jim Ward on the farm, which was where the fire station is now. So I did that summers, and I managed to have a little accident along the way, tipped a tractor over, and well, we were all young, I think, once. So anyway, after that, I went off to 2 years of Hudson Valley for community college and majoring in auto mechanics and helping Fred during the school breaks and when there was time. In 63 and 4, after college, I went to work for Lincoln Mercury International Truck Dealership in Ithaca. And very soon after that, the first year went by, I got a letter from the President of the United States. He said, "You're friends and countrymen." Well, and it went on and on and on. So anyhow, we know what that ended up with. So it was off to the Army, the boot camp, and from there it was advanced training in missiles. And after the training in missiles, I got an all-expense paid 12-day luxury trip on a troop ship to Germany. So I did the rest of my 2 years in Germany in the Army. So while I was in the Army, Fred had had a bad spell with his heart. When I returned to Candor in '66, I went to see Fred, subsequently finished up a couple of jobs he had started before his heart attack, and asked if he needed help for the next year. He said he didn't know what he was planning to do. The Alaska pipeline was going strong at that time and needed welders, so I went to Lincoln Electric Welding in Cleveland, Ohio to take 8 weeks of welding training. When I returned home, I bought a new Ford F-250 4x4, a new welder, and was about to head for Alaska. In the spring of '67, I was in the parking lot of my father's store. Fred pulled up. He says, "Are you still interested in operating a bulldozer?" Well, you bet. So for '67 and '8, we worked a deal where I leased his equipment, did his work under his supervision. I had to collect the money. I had to have my own insurance, and we settled up every month, and I was able to draw $4 an hour from the hourly rate of the jobs that I had done, which wasn't a bad deal for back then. But I didn't get paid to get to the job. I didn't get all that. I just got paid for the time that we were working. Now, just as a reference, at that time, diesel fuel was 10 cents a gallon. And we got $10 an hour for a D6. Well, today diesel fuel is anywhere from $2.20, $30, $40 to $3 a gallon, and we're getting $165 for a D6, give or take. So anyway, the arrangement I had with Fred, we did for 2 years. Fred was doing some more of his own work, and he had another bad spell with his heart again. And he guessed if he was going to stay alive, he needed to stop bulldozing. So in '69, I bought the machines from Fred, or 3 machines from Fred, and Fred carried the paper, and so I paid him off over a period of years with him carrying the paper, which, what a great start. I mean, I got a business, I got customers, I got equipment, and of course, I can't be content to just do the one-man thing like Fred was very, very, very successful at. So that same year of '67 that I originally started, I also purchased the old Borden's Creamery building, which had been owned by Tom and Paul Cavatayo. They bought it, scrapped almost all of the metal out of the inside of it, and left concrete. And more concrete. And more concrete. All at different levels. So to make it usable for my maintenance shop, there was no simple task, full of pipes, etc., and with the help of a lot of very good people my age and older and younger, over several years and a fair amount of beer, because the mill stream was across the street. We busted, knocked out, pushed and pulled to make the rest of the building useful. Bob Houck, who I noticed snuck in the back here, installed the very first overhead heater in the single bay that was serviceable and was able to use. So we then had heat. What a deal. So, and I have to really reach out to thank Bob Barden and Lois, who over the years were as constant as anyone could be in helping, working with. We had a couple of joint ventures, which I'll get into. I wish Lois was here, because they really helped me through some tough times. Otto Agard, Anthony, also worked for me early on, and then he decided he'd go back and work at the union. So in '71, I acquired a D7E and a Brockway tractor, which Hannah said she could hear me when I left Spencer, so she knew when to get supper ready. So in the fall of '72, I asked my girlfriend, Hannah, if she would do the paperwork for my first full-time employee, which was Mike Wagstaff. As she said, there's a fool born every minute. Hannah graduated as an English major, never to fathom needing business accounting. So she says, well, I can take some night courses at TC3, no problem, right? Do you want to say anything about this?
Yeah, well, I quickly discovered that basic accounting courses have absolutely nothing to do with weekly payroll and all of the state and federal government stuff that you have to deal with. The night courses were interesting, but they didn't have a whole lot to do with it. Now, we're going to start this PowerPoint presentation was put together for our, as you can see, for our 50th. And so the pictures are not in the order I would have liked. I tried this afternoon to adjust that, but PowerPoint got the best of me, and it's nothing that you're going to figure out in, 25 minutes. So we're just gonna run through it, and you can ask about the pictures and so forth. We'll just let it run, and Bron can continue talking. So go ahead.
So, to her dismay, 4 or 5 years later, I don't know which it was, we had over 50 employees. And she still was not totally prepared for life as a secretary of an excavating company. So most of the early work was farm-related. People like Rob Howland and the local farms had lots of hedgerows to move, lots of ponds to build, diversion ditches to put in, barnyard improvements, spring water development so that they didn't have to run their cows. And then at that same era, they were trying to keep cows out of the creeks. And so there was a lot of farm-related work, along with new homes, cellars, lots of cellars. Roger knows, I've done a lot of cellars around the area. Well, Rick knows. Kevin knows.
Lots of ponds.
Yeah.
Swimming pools.
Swimming pools?
Swimming pools. You dug my swimming pool.
Oh, yeah, okay, that's right. With a bulldozer yet.
Yep.
Yeah, that's right, holy cow. So anyway, a lot of the people we worked for, the customers were all local people, and some of the contractors were Bill Franson, for instance. We did almost all of his cellars for all the houses he built, and he built a lot of them. Ed Haynes was another one, and in '72, Agnes showed up. I don't know if any of you remember that, but that led to an extremely large amount of flood remediation work. Now, the Conservation Department put together some packages that you would go with other contractors, and you would bid on each one of these packages. Well, as we went along, there was another one of my contractor competitors, Dick Coleman. We did a lot of work against each other for years. And every time we'd read the description of the work, and Dick would say, oh yeah, we gotta move these trees over here, move this brush, clean the bar out there, and move the derbis. This went on for about 4 different viewings, and I'm saying, what the heck is derbis? It's spelled debris.
Debris.
So we've been moving derbis for a lot of years. 73, wow. Shell Oil came to town. Most of you can remember Shell had almost all the acreage in the whole southern tier tied up for gas leases for $2 an acre. Well, we were fortunate enough because of the location of the very first test well, which was up on Spalding Hill. Jack Klausner, they went to see, he was the owner of the land. They went to see Jack, and he said, "Do you know somebody with a bulldozer?" Sicked him on me, and what a shot in the arm. We spent all summer, we went from a couple machines to 4 or 5 machines. We went clear down into Pennsylvania, into Harrodsville, and Trumansburg. We did 13 different test well sites. They knew there was gas, but they didn't know how to get it. That was before the fracking and all that stuff. So they folded their tent, let the leases go, went home. So that was, but what a year 73 was. So because of the big year in 73, we incorporated in 74, and that was certainly to our behalf. Pollock Lake, commonly known as, was also in that same time frame. And that was the largest dirt job I had ever done. The site work for the gas wells, that was all a lot of dirt, but it was a lot of dirt. There was no creativity of any of it. So that was a pretty good shot in the arm. Started figuring out at that point, after Shell went home, well, what are we gonna do? So looked around, everybody else is trying to push dirt, build buildings, all that. I said, well, maybe there's something else we can do that doesn't involve all of the same things. So I got the idea about burying the telephone cable with the cable plows. So 75, so that started the ball rolling in 74. 75, Hannah and I got married. And there's the result of the end result of all of that. But in 75, I got a contract to bury telephone cable in Newport, New York. It was an REA job, which is Rural Electrification Administration. And I didn't have cable plow. What do you do now? How are you going to bury cable without a cable plow? Well, my Caterpillar friend knew where there was a D4 cable plow. I didn't have a D4, I had a D5. So dragged this cable plow home. It was fairly new plow, but it wasn't built for a D5. So I spent nights and days and days and nights modifying this plow so it would fit on a D5. Perfect. Got it done. Got it done. We took it up to Bob Barden's farm to see if we're really going to plow, put cable, or put stuff in the ground and everything. And sure enough, it did. And it moved like the next week to Newport. Well, we went to Newport up near Poland, and we were going like gangbusters. I had a lousy crew to work with. Ivan Gowan, Sam Gowan, Jack Ellenwood, Cliff Ulrich. We all moved up there, and that was a joint venture we had with Bob. He took his backhoe to put the little boxes in, and we really were doing gangbusters. Had an inspector change midstream. We all know what inspectors can do. Inspector says, book says you gotta have a D6. Can't plow cable with a D5. Excuse me? We've been here for 2 weeks, just doing everything right, perfect. Got the depth, no, gotta have a D6. I said, okay, I got one of them home. Took the D5 home, gave her a paint job and overhaul, D6 stickers on the side, went right back with the same machine, and he was happy and we were happy. Believe it or not, it's true. So anyway, that went very well. All of Newport went extremely well. With that crew, we put in over 20,000 feet of cable in one day. Restoring. And that's a lot. So my wife said that every time that we had a child, I did something that she wouldn't know anything about. In fact,
This was great because this was in the days that when you had a baby, you were in the hospital for 3 days, which means he was left totally unsupervised. The first time, that happened with Brad, and we ended up with this maintenance shop, which also included a vehicle inspection and all sorts of, I had no clue this was gonna happen. Plus, we had a mechanic, and now we have public maintenance. I said, where did this come from? The second time was, of course, when Will was born, and we bought the big loader, the Terex, and something else happened. I mean, you just couldn't, this was an impossible situation.
He's not guilty. Not guilty. So, Jerry Rice, who had run where Junior Smith is, who had run that, ran afoul of the finance committee, and we hired him, and he came to work for us at that point in time. And he was there a few years, but we stayed open. Don Stapleton came on with us a few years later, and so that went good. 1978, we had another REA contract up in Delhi. This time, I really wanted a big cable plow. I had this D7 that I bought, and so they made, the quality manufacturer was in Oakland, California. So I buy a cable plow mounted on the D7. How are we going to get it here? Well, her sister lived in California. We rented a U-Haul truck, loaded this 10,000-pound cable plow in the back of a U-Haul truck. 3 days later, we got the cable plow there in our yard to start installing on the D7. So we put that on. That was a success, has been a success. I still own it. We used it just a few years ago to bury some TV cable for hayfling. Now that's my tractor. Nobody else gets to run that. That stays home with me unless I authorize its use.
Nobody else can run it. It takes 3 hands and 4 feet.
Well, thank you, Hannah. And so we had 100 miles to do in Delhi, and that Bob also went. We had a little different crew. Lanny Seaman worked for us, and several others. And we did exceptionally well with that in Delhi. And that was the only place that I have ever worked where you did this week's work, you went home, figured it up, you went back Monday morning to start all over again, they gave you a check for what you did last week.
Wow.
Wow was right. It was a private, independent phone company, and we were doing a good job, they were pleased, and they rewarded us, and we rewarded them with a lot of good work. Just a little side note, everybody knows about the old glass jar gas pumps.
Yeah.
They're very valuable today. They're about $6,000, $8,000, $10,000 for one.
Wow.
Well, we were burying up in Bavina in Delhi, and there's one down in the yard. Hadn't been used in years. Talked to the farmer, old guy, nice guy. Bought it, gave him a check for $100, never brought it home. Yeah, I've had a few of those. And it wasn't there 25 years later. So, then we had another REA contract up in Nickelville, and that required additional services. We had to put in the poles, put up the aerial telephone lines, so we had to add more equipment, more people, do a little different work, and those aerial guys, their story all unto themselves. So from the mid-70s to the 90s, 95, a significant portion of our business was telephone related. We did some cathodic protection for the pipelines down through Hancock and down that way. Every year we do a little bit. And that was similar to burying the telephone cable. You buried cathodic protection, and you had to put anodes in it and hook it to the pipeline and on the way. Well, 1986 came. We had a pretty big snowstorm. I had a brand new first four-wheel drive backhoe that Caterpillar had sold in the area. We had a big snow, and Brad was 9. what do you do with a 9-year-old kid and a brand new backhoe? You send him down to the bus garage to plow the snow out of the way. Well, somebody had been down in their cutting lot, zigzagging, and they ended up backing into the bus garage door. So the backhoe driver is down there clearing the snow out of the way, and the sheriff shows up. And so he looks at the door, and then he calls the backhoe guy over, and he goes over and he looks. He looks again and says, son, how old are you? 9. Oh, well, where's your father? And of course, we were up the road at the creamery shop. So I went up and I played dumb. I said, well, I thought it was like the farm where the kids could drive a tractor and so on and so forth. Dave King showed up and says, when the sheriff was there, and said, oh, we'd rather have him plow snow than the older people. He does a better job. So the sheriff went away happy, and we went away happy, but we kept Brad on a lower level. So anyhow, so April of '88, we'd outgrown our shop facility in the village. We had way too many people, way too many vehicles, trucks, and the site where we currently are on 96B became available and at a rate that was affordable. We had looked into it earlier when the engineers had built it, left. They wanted an awful lot of money for it at that time, and it sat there pretty much empty for 15 years. And so we got together and we built our first tandem dump truck up there, and it allowed us to get into the gravel business. Well, here we go again. More stuff for my bride to do, permits and all that stuff. But so there was a significant investment in development of the gravel operation. We installed a use scale at the shop and incorporated the business in 1990 as H.L. Robinson Sand and Gravel. Why did we do that? Because at the time, contracts that had federal, state, or state money required a participation of minority, disadvantaged, veteran, women's-owned businesses. And, well, they still do, yes. So, she's already there all day, every day. She's gotten her dump truck license. She's been delivering gravel. No, she's not up feeding the crusher. She's doing all the paperwork. So why not? You tell the story.
Well, so we decided to apply for a women's owned business. We went through the whole process twice, once with the Department of Economic Development in New York, and the other time with the Department of Transportation. And what they wanted to do is come in and inspect and see if this woman who wanted to be a business was really involved in business. Literally, a guy from the state came for a period of 3 days, and he looked over my shoulder every time I opened a file. He listened to every phone conversation. He asked some really ridiculous questions. He followed me everywhere. He wanted to know who I was talking to and what I was talking about. And one day, it was a very busy day, and I'm trying to get things down. I keep bumping into him because the guy is just here all the time. I turned in, I was going to the ladies' room, and I just, without even thinking, just took off, and I realized he was following. And I said, I'm sorry, but I'm going to the ladies' room. You're going to have to stay here. And he did, but that sort of thing just drove you crazy. So they denied it the first time for one reason or another, and then we tried it again with the Department of Transportation. We went through the same thing all over again, the guy following me around asking questions and so forth. And the upshot was that they would give us that
WBE.
WBE but Bron and I had to get divorced. Well, you know how the rest of that story went. So we were unable to get it, but it was just amazing. Because they felt that the phone numbers were too close, were the
Businesses were
same,
too closely associated.
associated. So they wouldn't let us do it. But anyway, that's the state for you.
So, again, from 92 to 95, we had major contracts from GTE, both aerial and buried. And these included all 14 of the western counties of New York State. So we had lots and lots of windshield time. And to 95, we were at our sisters for Thanksgiving. The profitability of the phone work had gone down. Fiber optic was starting to come in, meant you didn't need a lot of copper anymore, meant that the work was slowing down, the prices had gone south, wasn't any money. All our stuff that we'd been using in the area was worn out, we had to buy new. We says, why are we doing this?
The tail was wagging the dog, I think is the right expression. It was just,
So we pulled the plug on the phone work, canceled our contracts, went back to our core work, gravel, bulldozing, and that sort of stuff. 99, Will had gone to Youngstown State. It was a 2-year program. And if you folks know Will very well, he got an education, but it didn't have anything to do with academics. So, in 99, he was through out there and he came back and became full-time in the business. And of course, all these guys, they didn't have spare time. Dad had them doing something all the time, absolutely all the time. So, 2001, you folks remember pretty well, most of you, we had a big fire at the shop. We had insulated the shop with, first off, we'd tried to insulate it to keep it warm, because when they built it in 71, they had 1 little inch of fiberglass screwed to the inside panel. I talked to Bill Franson, guy we still doing a lot of work for. How do we insulate it? Oh, we'll blow it full of cellulose, because there's a big void between the outside and inside. Well, it's good. It's a metal building. The building was the fire retardant in the blown-in cellulose was treated with an ammonium hydro something or other to keep it fire retardant. And what's that do when it gets a little damp? It ate my building up. We had sheets of the outside of the building falling into the street. So we took all that out, recited the whole thing. Well, now how do we insulate it? Well, we'll foam it. The guy comes in with the stuff, the truck, puts 3 or 4 inches of that beautiful foam in there. The place got as quiet as a church mouse. Nobody banging on anything. It just absorbed all of the noise. It was super insulation until we welded on the column to put a real mount on the column. 350 degrees where you bake biscuits. That foam gives off a methane type gas, and it caught on fire, and that fire went up and spread out like this, up the wall. Now, the reason we know that, I had been a bad boy in Virginia and gotten a speeding ticket. So I came into the shop because we were going back to Virginia so I could pay my debt to society down there. And I'm standing at the stairway and I see the whole thing starting. That fire went up, and as I said, it spread, got blacker and blacker, hit the ceiling, and it started rolling down the ceiling. Literally rolling. The purlins go across, it would go down, and the ball would get bigger and bigger. And it literally went the whole length of that shop and banged against the other wall and bounced back just like you would see a kid throw a ball against the wall and it bounced back. And of course, by this time, the thing is monstrous. From down here, it's clear as a day. From up there, it's nothing. Well, we screamed, got everybody out. Girls had to use the fire escape from the office, but it trashed. everything, there's a couple pictures in here somewhere.
Yeah,
It trashed everything because that soot, it's just so.
it was very hot. In the top part, it melted all of the electrical stuff,
Melted
all
all
of
the
the,
aluminum fixtures and the
and
lights.
all the controls for the crane, the overhead crane, everything.
So that 2001 was really quite a stressful year rebuilding. It's in the winter, January when this happened. We had put an addition on the back of the shop, which didn't have doors to access the front, and so we didn't have any heat out there, but we jerry-rigged some heat and worked there as the winter progressed and gutted the rest of the building and re-insulated it with fiberglass and tin. Now we got all the noise back. But nevertheless, 2002, the year right after the fire, Brad, who had gone to Case Western for engineering and had done a fifth-year program and was working for Peter Kiewit and Sons, which is a huge, they just got a $280 million bypass in I think it's Colorado, Nevada. And so he worked at Wolf Creek Pass, and he worked up, where was the other place, right up north?
He worked on
all over the
E470.
place.
So anyway,
Based in Denver, all over the place, out there.
so anyway, he came back into the business, and at the same time, we leased the Spencer Pit time frame from John King, and so we had 2 gravel pits to work from. Well, as all of you remember, in 2008, the bottom kind of fell out of the world. Gas was discovered, the Marcellus Shale was really, really going strong in Pennsylvania. We, Brad and the kids mostly, and myself, because of my experience with the Shell oil and the profitability that there was when the gas people came to town, courted Chesapeake and the gas business. And we went down there and we built sites. We built the very first freshwater pond, and this is like 8-acre pond that you build just to hold the frack water. And we did the solidification, where you take the drillings that comes out of the well and you mix it with hydrated lime until it is a paste and isn't liquid anymore, literally with a small excavator, and mix it until it'll stay in a dump truck. You put a liner in a dump truck and it goes off to the landfill. And we did that all the way through till 15, roughly 15. And at that time, in the later years, the gas kept moving further west, or was more development. We were in 5 states. We worked in 5 states. Ask my bride about the payroll.
Every single state has different regulations, and sometimes the different counties and sometimes the different towns in that county have different regulations about payroll. It was the worst nightmare, and the upstairs office, the accounting office, was in a state of chaos. The other thing that we found interesting is that when we had an office in southern Ohio, one of the new employees called up in an absolute crazy rage. Somebody took all this money out of my check. You can't do that, that's my money. The payroll office explained that those were federal and state regulations, and we didn't have any choice. These people had never worked for anything but cash. And so they didn't even realize there was a deduction from your pay. So that was the first kind of thing. It was an interesting time.
Well, 2013, roughly, we started doing some directional drilling, and I don't know if any of you were really familiar with that, but it's a machine on tracks, and it's like a giant screw that you can push on. It goes down in the ground, and it has a for the most part, it has a beaver tail point on it that goes around and around like this. So when you're going straight ahead, you push it hydraulically, then you add another rod. There should be, have you come across that picture by the way, the directional drill?
There was one that we.
Okay, so that machine would go, so you can steer this rod as it goes in the ground. You can make it go down, you can make it go to the right, you can make it go to the left, you can make it come back up. So we've gotten pretty much, how much did we do in Saratoga this spring, right?
Oh, it was several thousand feet in the state park.
In the state park in Sarasota this spring. So we're covering a lot of area. These guys, I've been skating, I've been not doing much of anything for the last 10 years except going in, making myself a nuisance. My kids still ask me questions, sometimes because they want an answer, sometimes because they want to humor me, and I don't care as long as they keep asking. I've been very, very blessed with my family, and much blessed that the boys especially wanted to go in and do what we started. It's been extremely rewarding. These guys are doing fantastic. This year, I don't think I've had anything to do with the business per se, except, again, going in and maybe I can help, maybe I can chase parts, maybe I can do something, but I'm pretty much out of it.
There is one exception, however. We cannot leave town, and whether it's for the day or for a week or a month, that there is not an assignment to go look for something. So we know every single dealer of anything, parts, machinery, and even when we've been down in Florida for a month and a half or 2 months at a time, we get a call about some piece of machinery that's not necessarily in Florida. Why, it might be in Georgia, or after all, you guys are coming home, you wouldn't mind stopping at one of these places. We do, that part of it is kind of fun. We've had some very interesting adventures and met some pretty bizarre people, actually, in our travels.
But Hannah stopped going into what, about 2010?
Yeah.
And the new gang, Hannah 7 came back with her husband. So this is, what year, Hannah, did you come back?
End of 13.
And 13? That long ago?
Yeah, yeah,
Where did the time go? And so her husband and she started their family in Maryland. And it was throw the kid out the window to the babysitter on the way to work. I'll go 45 minutes this way, you go an hour that way. Whoever gets back first gets to pick the kid up. And her husband said one day, we're not doing this anymore. So he found a job listed at Cornell University for a structural engineer, which is what her husband does. So we met with Jim Cosda, and Rob applied for the job and got it. So in October of that year, her husband, her daughter,
It was 18 months old, and my house was definitely not ready for an 18-month-old.
and their dog moved in. She stayed down in Maryland. She had a good job with Rogers Group down there. She didn't want to leave just yet. So sometime later that she came up, and they lived downstairs in our house, which is plenty big, and then built their new house up behind us. So our grandkids are very close. And fortunately, as most of you probably know, that Brad and Mary Ann, after 13 years of marriage, provided us with a granddaughter in January. So we don't know if we got any more coming. Will seems to be out of it. Known, at least. So really, other than we're doing a lot of site development, water, sewer, Oneana. We've been in Oneana in the city doing new water services. Marathon, we did a big substation a few years ago for NYSEG and Marathon. We remodeled one of the Ithaca College buildings inside, chewed up their swimming pool, and we've done big jobs in Richmondville, which is up Cobolskill Way, Owasco, Morris, Gilbert, State Park, Saratoga. And as we speak today, I checked with the gal, we have 64 employees. So I don't think many people have any idea the volume or the scope or magnitude of the work that these guys have taken this company to. Not me, but since they've come on board, they've all taken a real hold, and a lot of it falls on Brad. Hannah jumped ship, she's doing her own thing. She's doing landscape architecture for hire, if you need anything. And working for some contractors, as well as with this COVID thing, it shook everything up. Her former employee, in Maryland, says, hey, how'd you like to work 30 hours from home a week? How about that? So that helped her decision, so she's able to work from home some and do her own thing, and seemingly everything is going absolutely well, and I really want to thank all of you. Do you want to say here?
I don't know.
I want to thank all you people for coming.
You ought to get his
I-
kids to stand up
And I
there.
appreciate all of your
Get the kids up
patronage over the
front
years.
so I can get them on
and,
film.
Good health to all of you. Stay healthy, be strong.
Come on up.
Yeah.
The other thing I would like to say is my appreciation for the community support, because when we had the fire, it was really a drastic kind of thing. And people were very supportive, and the other thing is, we have the soccer field next to us, and we have been able to use that for the community, but it's a nice feeling to be from a small town. And on the rare occasions, and one hopes it's really rare, you have to have the emergency squad come. It's a really great feeling to know who's picking you up.
Yeah.
So thank you all.
Anything you want to say, Brad?
I think we covered it.
You did hear about the newlyweds that got the putty jar and the Vaseline jar mixed up, didn't you? All our windows fell out.
I heard that joke when I was in high school.
Still works. Yes, Rob.
I got a story to tell that Bron may not even be aware of. I think all of you might know, I had a farm. I sold the farm, that brought the Amish to the neighborhood. And recently, the young fellow that owns what used to be my heifer barn on the corner of Fairfield and Cantor Hill had a pasture walk. They are big into pasture, and they had a pasture walk. And before the pasture walk, the question came up about a bridge that I had built. And where did the idea come from? And I couldn't take all the credit, but back in those years when I was farming, Bron was involved in a lot of the conservation things that I put in over time. And this fella, I'm not sure what his title is, but he was a government person of some sort. And he wanted to know about the bridge, where the idea came from. He was convinced that anything like that had to come from some high-powered government engineer that knew more than the rest of the world. And I told him it wasn't really my idea. If you really want to know who engineered it, you need to talk to Bron. And I said, what I did was I told Bron, this is what the problem is. We got to get this equipment across, and it's a stream that most of the time got just a trickle down through. And the rest of the time, when it really floods, it goes over the top. And NRCS, National Resource Conservation Service, Soil and Water, all those guys had engineered all kinds of different stream crossing structures, and then you get 2006, 2011, and Bron's got another job because he's got to fix it. And so, this one, Bron and I talked, he told me what he thought it would cost, and I said, fine, I can handle that. And he went to work on it. And the other person involved, and I don't remember her name, but he was an older fella from Candor.
Gene
that-
Thomas?
Huh?
Gene Thomas?
Gene Thomas. Gene was the guy that put the blocks in place. Bron engineered it. I just told him what I wanted, and it has survived '06 and '11. And I remember distinctly, Bron came to me when it was about completed, and he said, I'll accept this much money, it's more than what we had talked about, but he said, I think I over-engineered the bridge. And, but that bridge today survived all these storms and all the ones in between, and I believe now it probably has ended up in some agency's book of how to do a stream crossing in a bridge, and it didn't come from some high-priced engineer.
Thank you, Rob.
They were really impressed. They had a large crowd there that were interested in pasture and all that kind of stuff, and that's what they were there for. But they told me afterwards that thing that was most important that day, which was just a week or two ago, the most important thing that got the most interest was your bridge.
You still use the watering? You still use the watering system, or do they?
No, they don't. It's too much work for them.
A lot of bidders on every job.
Bron, I have some creative examples of your concrete block work at my
Oh,
place.
yeah, well, Will was probably more
Will
involved in
did,
that.
right, Will,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
He did a nice job with the dam and the bridge. And then I think our pond was one of the first ponds you guys put in.
It was.
And it didn't hold water until these guys dug a pond. And 16 dump trucks later of that clay, my pond now holds water.
We tried, we tried.
I got one for you, just I don't wanna break your heart. 7 of the ponds you built for me at the old house are now pasture.
Oh, no.
All the valves are buried, the guy
Bulldoze them
wanted,
all
the
in?
guy
Reverse
wanted,
engineering
he
and
wanted
fish farm.
reverse fish farm, he wanted pasture. All the valves are under there, everything,
Oh,
it's
that's
just
too
all,
bad.
it looks beautiful, but,
Oh.
you know, we weren't using the pond.
We built raceways for Rick
Yeah,
to raise his fish. That was a while ago,
yeah, yeah.
because that was before you moved down on the main
I
road.
think it was, it had to be around 85.
We were all excited when we moved to Freeville because we had room for a pond, so we had Bron come over to, and he, after he worked at it, he said, that's not gonna work because they won't hold water. So we bought a bedroom suit instead.
There you go.
But I really wanted mine.
Wish I got it.
Ron, you remember pushing, trying to push under the road? One weekend, walking over, pushing something
No,
from the
yeah.
house under the road.
It was, you know, we redid the septic system at the house, at our house at the
Yeah.
farm.
Yeah.
And we were gonna connect it to the one that was at the barn, which was a high-class government engineer job. And you had to push it under the road, and you had that thing that ran forever. And it went through and came up in the middle of the road. That's the other side. And then you called the highwayman, and he dug the road up in the middle of the day to retrieve the whole lot.
That's a whole hog. And that's where directional drilling is such a great improvement, because you couldn't control, the whole hog was just its own unit, so it'll go chug, 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 but where it comes up is anybody's guess. And very often, in a lot of other places where we use that method, out in western New York, they would put, when they were building roads, they take old bridge abutments and all sorts of things to stabilize the road. Well, of course, the whole hog hits that, and what does it do? Straight up.
I got a story for you, Brian. When you dug my cellar for the house, and Brian come up to the house there, and he was just getting started in the business. And I told him what I wanted, how I wanted the cellar built and all that, and Brian goes up and he walks all over the property, and he comes back to me and he says, I better go talk to Freddie. I said, okay. Well, then he went back for a while, and came back with Freddie. And it came out perfect. I mean,
Thank you.
beautiful. And then he sent a gentleman over with, I don't know what kind of bulldozer it was, but it was a big one. Like Wagstaff.
Yeah.
And I was having some trees buried out front where the house is now. And Mike's going down in digging this big trench to bury these trees, and he got so he was up to the top of the bulldozer, and he went down in there, and I'm waiting, and I'm waiting, and I'm going like, what's going on? Well, Mike come up out of there, and his face was white as a sheet. And I said, what's the matter? He goes, there's quicksand down there. I darn near lost this thing. But, yeah, nice job on there.
Well, Freddie Jantz that gave me the break, and he moved more dirt by accident than most dozen people can move on purpose. He was really a magician
Oh,
and
yeah.
just a gentleman of a human being. And just,
And he had some wonderful expressions too. One of my favorites that I still use.
Oh, really?
When people come up to our house and they go, wow, that was some hill. And Freddie used to say, it's a hill all the way to the top.
how that happened, one of the first times I was moving over to Oak Hill in a machine on the tractor trailer, and he was explaining to me the route to go and how to go, and he says, now, you, at the bottom there, he says, you put that in the bottom, and he says, you stayed in the bottom because that's a hill all the way to the top.
Hey, Brian, I got a story when Bob Barden was helping me, we built my place up there in Dunn Cellar.
Yeah.
Bob had him do a little job, we had an old root cellar, it was the old Rod and Gun Club down by the creek. And I wanted to get that bulldozer in. So Bob Barden came up that day with the bulldozer, and he's down there working and everything. And next thing I know, he's off the bulldozer, he's running towards my house, going, stay, 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 stay. There must have been 30 snakes in that.
Bob was
I didn't realize he was afraid of
terrified.
snakes. But I never saw a guy turn white, he ran up to the house, left the bulldozer running.
He was definitely afraid of snakes.
Oh, yeah.
Ron, I have some pictures of Fred Gates digging my grandfather's pond. Like him on the dozer digging the pond.
Wow. That's the cellar for our house right there. That one. When was that, 52? No.
Oh, no, that,
79.
79.
79.
79.
No, my grandfather's pond.
Oh, I'm
My
sorry.
grandfather's pond,
Yeah.
That was what year, no?
52, I think.
Yeah. That was before I was.
Right.
He was a little young then to
Yeah.
run dozer.
I probably wanted to back then.
That's really not according to you sending him, Brad out to do the
And 9
snow
years
plow.
Yeah. Well, the other thing that happened with the kids, when we had the snow in '94, and the school was absolutely buried.
93.
So, of course, there was no school for quite a few days, and the kids were all running everything. I mean, as you remember, the town was just inundated with snow. And Dave King said, you know, you guys have done a great contribution doing all this work at the school. We're cleared out before all the other schools, and we're gonna make sure that the community knows that it was your work that allowed us to go back to school this soon. And Will goes, oh no, please don't do that. But they did have a lot of fun. I mean, you know, that was just a delight to them, moving all the snow.
Ron, tell them a story about your interest in bulldozers when you were crossing a bridge in the car and seemed like the bridge got in the way of the car while you're looking down over the.
Oh, yeah, well, some of you know that story, I think. But when they had the old bridge by Punks, the old upright overhead bridge, well, you know my fascination for bulldozers, right? Well, Dick Kirk, he's down in the creek doing some work for the village, cleaning some of the debris out. And so I'm gazing out the window watching Dick Kirk do his bulldozing right up the side of that bridge, right upside down in the middle of it. Middle of the day, stone sober.
So, when we're traveling and there's a big excavating, you know, a big highway job, I say, wait a minute, I'll drive. Because I look and his head is like this. We're going down the highway at 70, so that doesn't work so
It
well.
doesn't click? Okay.
Anyway.
Well, thank you for
Yeah.
such a great program. We appreciate
Well,
it.
Well done.
I enjoyed it. I have enjoyed making it so that I could.